We're focusing in on the concepts of responsibility, agency, freedom, and persons, what it means to be a person. And we've looked at one of the philosophical problems, the problem of autonomy, or we could call it the problem of responsibility. Now we're going to look at the second philosophical problem related to these concepts. This is the problem of free will and determinism. To explain that problem, we first need to look at some terminology. First of all, there's this term determinism. Determinism is the claim in metaphysics that there's only one possible future. There's only one possible future. So what is happening now determines what the future is. And there's only one possible future. Now, there are different kinds of determinism. One kind, and this is the kind we'll talk about mostly in this class, is physical or causal determinism. That version of determinism claims that the current state of the world plus the laws of physics give us one possible future. So, what that means is that if you could know with certainty the current state of the world, where every single electron is, where every single atom, the entire state of the world, if you could know that comprehensively, and if you knew the laws of physics, which describe how physical states of the world change into other physical states, then you could exactly predict the future. Given the current state of the world and the laws of physics, there's only one possible future, and in theory, we could know what that is if we had perfect knowledge. So that is physical determinism. An image for that is, imagine dominoes stacked up in a line. If you tap one domino, it will hit the next one, which hits the next one, which hits the next one. Determinism claims, physical determinism claims that the universe works that way, that everything that happens is a result of the prior event, necessarily a result. That event necessarily resulted from the prior event, and so on. Another kind of determinism is called theological determinism. That view claims that there's only one possible future because God somehow decides what the future is going to be, or God somehow causes it or ensures that there's only one possible future. Now, here's the philosophical problem related to determinism. If determinism is true, it seems like everything you've done could not have been otherwise. Because if you choose to do something, like you choose to wake up an hour earlier tomorrow morning, and so you set your alarm, that choice to set your alarm was determined by something prior that happened in your brain, and that was determined by something prior that happened in your brain, which was determined by something prior. So you choosing to set the alarm, you could not actually have done anything different. So even though it feels like you had a choice between setting the alarm or not setting the alarm, actually you setting the alarm was determined from the very beginning, if physical determinism is true. And if you could not have done otherwise, if that applies to all of your actions, including your choice about who to date or what career to have, or, all of your actions, that seems to suggest that you don't have any free will and therefore perhaps no responsibility. On the other hand, if determinism is false, what would that mean? Then that seems to mean that there's no direct link between your choice, if you think about your choice as a mental event in your brain, if that doesn't directly determine your behavior, then that seems also to result in no control, which means no agency and therefore no responsibility. So you can actually think of this as the link between your choice and your action. If there's not a direct link there, then you might choose to set your alarm and, I don't know, like your hands start doing something else or your body won't cooperate. Or you could also think about the link between your deliberation and your choice. If there's not a deterministic link there, then you could decide to do something and then it doesn't result in an actual choice. So again, if determinism is false, it seems like you don't have control over your action, and therefore, again, maybe you have no responsibility. And yet, it seems like humans are responsible for some things. And that's the problem, is how can we explain responsibility if determinism is true or if determinism is not true? Now, here are some of the main views about how free will connects with determinism. So you need to understand these terms. The first big category of views is called incompatibilism. Incompatibilism is the claim that free will is not compatible with determinism. So what that means is that if it turns out that physical determinism is true, like if the world is actually built that way, what that would mean is that humans don't have free will. Or conversely, if humans do have free will, that means the world can't be deterministically constructed. Free will and determinism are not compatible. They cannot both be true. That's what incompatibilism claims. There are two different versions of incompatibilism. One is called libertarianism. Now you have to pay close attention here because in the context of free will and determinism, in the context of the metaphysics of free will, this term libertarianism refers to the idea that determinism is false and free will exists. You might have heard that term libertarianism in a political context where it refers to a specific political theory. That's not what it means here. In this context, it refers to a theory about free will. And again, that theory claims that determinism actually is false and that we do have free will. Free will exists. The other version of incompatibilism is exactly the opposite. And for some reason, philosophers call it hard determinism. It's actually a bad label because the view is not about a kind of determinism like soft determinism or hard determinism. It's actually a view about how free will is connected with determinism. Hard determinism claims that determinism is true and that free will does not exist. So you can see that it is exactly the opposite. Now, the other main category of views is called compatibilism. Compatibilism is the theory that free will is compatible with determinism. So even if determinism is true, it's still possible that humans have free will. And you might wonder, how is that even possible? And the answer is libertarians, for example, well, incompatibilists in general, and compatibilists have different understandings of what it means to be free in the first place. So they have different understandings of what it means to have agency, to have control over your actions. So that's part of what we will be digging into. And just a point of clarification, sometimes in philosophy literature, the view compatibilism is called soft determinism as opposed to hard determinism. Sometimes it's called soft determinism. Again, that's not a very useful label in my opinion. So we will stick to calling it compatibilism, and that is a well-known term for this view.